Okay, that was good. That felt good. You can breathe. You're not out of the woods yet, but you can breathe. And you can expect better things going forward. That was good. OG's back. Let's talk. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, RJ Carbone. You are listening to BD4, where there's no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. We also do MMA. Yanks every series, Knicks every game, MMA on occasion. Let's get to it.
Anthony for three. Bang! That one goes down, and the game is tied.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
The Yankees are champions of baseball.
Shaking and baking right here on the neophyte.
U.S. trying to close the show.
She was doing a great job of feeding.
That is
It's
it.
over.
See ya. 3,000 history for the next
Coming up, so KP, don't you regret not coming to the net? Don't you regret not coming to the net?
Game over. World Series over. Yankees win. The Yankees win.
Yeah, that felt good, man. Like, it's been a hell of a roller coaster of a season for this Knicks team. The ups and downs. But the one constant throughout this entire gosh damn thing, winning. The Knicks have found a way, despite all this up and down, peak and valley, extreme to the other extreme, despite all that, they've still won. They've won. At their worst, they've been average. Like, they started the season slow. Okay. For the first few months, right? They were in this, like, purgatory. They make the OG trade. Things take off. You get the January Knicks, right? They win 9 straight. It leaked into February, like 15 of 17 in early February. Obviously, Randall goes down late January. The vibes are down. The next day, OG Anunoby goes down. The vibes are down. Week or two later, the Knicks make the Detroit trade, and initially, most of us were excited. I was very excited. A lot of us were. Alec Burks and Bojan Bogdanovic get a couple of games under their belt, and they start playing worse and worse and worse. They were each respectable in their first game or two, but it got bad. At one point, the Knicks had lost 4 games in a row. You had role players having to take on bigger roles that they're not accustomed to. And it didn't feel good. You had a terrible loss where you scored 70-something points to Philly just this past weekend. And you're flirting with getting kicked into the play-in. Still are, but man, to get OG Anunoby back last night. And then on top of that, the Randall thing's still a bit scary to me. It's still uncertain, but it seems like he's going to try to come back at some point. You get the Mitchell Robinson update that he's going to be taking contact soon, and that's like the final step. But on top of all the bullshit, you look at the standings, the Knicks are still the 4 seed. They still have a home seed. How many, the Sixers are having trouble weathering the storm without Embiid. The Knicks have been without Randall, Robinson, Anunoby, and then in some games, Brunson on top of that, Hartenstein on top of that, DiVincenzo on top of that. They're still the 4 seed. And last night, they went out there on it was in Madison Square Garden, on TNT. You got the pregame panel, Kobe's sidekick, picking the Sixers. You got that WNBA random picking the Sixers. Shout out to Ian Eagle and Greg Anthony. Once a Nick, always a Nick. Shout out to both of them, though. They did a great job calling the game. But for the Knicks to make a statement like that, to clinch the tiebreaker, an important game, but to blow the brakes off of this Philly Sixers team, it was like a reminder. It was like an oh yeah moment. Like, oh shit. If you're an outside fan looking in and you're not a fan of the Knicks, it's like, oh yeah, that team was pretty good when they had OG Anunoby. And the Knicks won the game, and they improved to 13-2 with OG Anunoby. It just feels so good to have this kid back. He takes so much of a load off. It takes a load off my mind. Like, with everything going on in Clearwater, Florida right now with the Yankees, Jesus Christ. I need the Knicks. I need the Knicks more than anything, because the Yankees season, even with the news today about Cole, you're hearing mixed reactions. The Yankees season, it's starting to head towards that it's over, but you don't want to admit it yet territory. The Knicks, I was feeling like that for a while, but again, I said after the Brunson injury where he almost died and came back to life the same night, like that kind of gave me a new life. And then to have him back just fine, knock on wood, to have OG Anunoby return last night and to do what they did, it just helps me. So the Knicks are all I got right now. And his Randall thing, again, it's terrifying, but you haven't been hearing anything regarding a setback in a while, so that's the positive. So the Knicks won last night, folks. They won at a score of 106-79. 106-79. Big win for the Bockers. OG back for the Knicks. Tyrese Maxey back for the Sixers. The Knicks ran a lineup of Brunson, Dante, Hart, OG Hart, whatever way you want to put it, and Isaiah Hartenstein. And they look good right away. They get off to a 6-0 run to begin the game. You have OG Anunoby making plays on both ends. And the Knicks go up 26-14 after one quarter. Second quarter, the bench checks in, the Detroit guys check in, and things get bad for a little bit. Shocker. Every time those guys check in, bad things happen. But a few minutes after that, the Knicks find it again. They're getting transition baskets. They're making Tom Thibodeau-type plays, gritty, intangible type plays. And they're up 59-41 at halftime. The offense gets off to a bit of a slow start in the third quarter. But after a few minutes, the Knicks turn it on again. And they blow the brakes off the Sixers. It's 87-61 after 3. And by then, the entire fourth quarter was pretty much garbage time. You could go walk your dog, take out the trash, make dinner, do whatever you wanted to do. The Knicks win 106-79 against the Sixers last night to clinch the series, clinch the tiebreaker. 20 points from Brunson and Hart. Kelly Oubre had 19. Had an adorable little dunk, inflated his ego for a couple of seconds. Tyrese Maxey was held to 17. Discount quickly. But man, to have OG Anunoby back with this team just feels right. And I want to talk about all the things when we return from our first break here on BD4. Stay with us. Episode 643 of the podcast.
Hey there, thanks for listening in so far. If you enjoy this episode, please give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks so much. You can follow us on social media as well. On Instagram, we're at BD4Pod and at Rob J. Carbone. On X, we're at BD4Pod and at RJCBD4. And on Facebook, we're BD4.
Welcome back to the show, episode 643 of the podcast. The Knicks get OG back and win big. 106-79. Yeah, 106 points. The offense wasn't fantastic, but I kind of like that. It wasn't like it was an unsustainable offense where they just had a hot night. And you also do have to remember the Knicks play a slow pace. Their pace last night was just 88, and their offensive rating was 122. So keep that in mind whenever you look at points per game regarding the Knicks. They shot 51% from the field. They were 35% from three, 80% on the foul line. But watching, like the eye test, you could just see the difference that OG Anunoby makes. Now, himself as a scorer, fine. You got another 15 points to go to. He's not going to pop out at you in the box score. I think he had 14 last night. He's a fine offensive player himself, right? He's going to take some pressure off of guys, of course Brunson, but like DiVincenzo. He's a guy who can occasionally put the ball on the floor and attack closeouts. Was a little hesitant to do so last night, but that's his first game back. His transition game is very underrated. It's very good. You saw that one possession where he jumped the steal, or Brunson gets the steal, and him and OG are on the fast break. OG's the trailer. Brunson finds him behind the back, and OG throws down the dunk. Right, he's a really good above the rim player, very sneaky athleticism. Right, where we had RJ Barrett, no offense, he's doing great in Toronto, but over here in New York, when RJ Barrett got close to the basket, he was throwing up those contested bunnies and missing every one of them. OG Anunoby can actually get up, play above the rim, and he had a few of them last night. He's got a little Carmelo in the mid range too. His first basket, like he's very smooth and methodical in the mid-range. It kind of reminds me of the way Melo used to put the ball on the floor, do a little step back, smooth jumper, baseline. Like, we talked about that before he went down. He's got a little bit of that. But most importantly, man, what OG Anunoby provides offensively is making everybody else's life easier because he shoots the corners very well. Of course, the 3 points, but because he's able to get 3 points from the corner, it's the spacing that's going to see an uptick. The spacing that OG Anunoby is going to provide this Knicks team, like he did in January. Go back and watch last night's game again. Brunson saw less help. Dante too. And then when Philly did send help, Brunson now has an extra outlet to go to. It's not just Dante DiVincenzo and three non-spacers. No, he's got OG Anunoby here. Now I will add one critique. I think Tom Thibodeau should try as much as possible to get Dante DiVincenzo as the guy above the break, one pass from the action, as opposed to Josh Hart, because you saw early in the second half when they did struggle, top of the third quarter. Yeah, it was Hart who was next to those Brunson actions, and the offense was a little stagnant for a couple of minutes because of that. The defense doesn't respect him. So I would like to put Dante, who's a good shooter above the break, next to Brunson so you could avoid the help coming. But OG Anunoby's spacing, very noticeable last night. The amount of open catch and shoot looks that a lot of Knicks were getting, Brunson and Dante in particular. You haven't seen Brunson get many catch-and-shoot looks when Randall went down. OG returned last night. He got a few more. The paint's going to be open more. The paint was open last night, man, because the Knicks are now able to play a 4-out offense. They're able to play 4, maybe in some lineups 5-out. Right? And that might make a difference in a playoff series, man. Like, their offense last year in the regular season was top 3. Come playoff time, their defense got them back into games and winning games. It wasn't their offense. Brunson did his thing, but there wasn't a ton of offense outside of him. It was Brunson, and it was the defensive effort that won the Knicks games. Right? Brunson was working in a phone booth trying to create space. Get OG back in here now. The spacing on the floor might actually help this Knicks team produce some sustainable offense when you translate from the regular to the postseason. OG Anunoby as a corner spacer draws the defense out of the paint. He draws the defender off the roll. He draws the defender off the drive. The defense cannot collapse when OG's in the corner. When he's off ball, standing in the corners, weak side, strong side, doesn't matter because he's so accurate. You can't collapse. You had Jalen Brunson and Precious Achiuwa continuing to work that little 1-5 pick and roll between the two of them. Precious, who has developed excellent as a roll man. Brunson making pocket passes. We've brought up before that Jalen Brunson is very comfortable working the pick and roll with guys like Precious and Hart and Hart because he's more comfortable as a small guard making those pocket passes versus when he's running pick and roll with Mitch, he's not always going to hit the roll because Mitch is an above the rim big and Brunson's a small guy. He's not always going to be able to hit that target. But he was working the pick and roll last night. He had 20 and 9. He had a few of those assists to Precious and Hart. High pick and roll, working to a T. So you saw a number of examples of OG Anunoby last night, but a few of them that I want to point out. The first basket of the game for Isaiah Hartenstein came off a high pick and roll where he got the open lane because Tyrese Maxey was forced to stick onto OG Anunoby in the corner. You can't help on the short pick and roll anymore. You have to stick. You have to stay home. Brunson's first basket of the night was a floater, and he got an open lane because Tobias Harris was forced to stay home and stick onto OG in the corner. Dante DiVincenzo, one of the three-pointers he knocked down, I believe in the third quarter. It was from Brunson and Precious pick and roll. Precious hits OG on the wing, and then OG swings to Dante in the strong side corner. Dante knocks it down. So that's a 4-out offense. That's spacing. It's such a monumental difference. So I wanted to start with that. We'll be right back.
If you're interested in our website, just go to www.bd4blog.com. You can subscribe to our blog on there right on the front page. Just like on the podcast, we cover Yankees, Knicks, and MMA. Also on our website are the links to the different platforms for the podcast. Thanks so much.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, RJ Carbone. I appreciate you all tuning in. Episode 643 of BD4, where there's no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. If you guys are new, be sure to subscribe to the show, download these episodes. This podcast is available for both listen and to watch. You can watch it on YouTube and Spotify. You can listen to it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to give us a 5-star rating over on Apple Podcasts and a review if you enjoy the show. Folks, I want to now pivot to Precious Achiuwa, who came off the bench last night and continued to look very good. Therefore, I'm handing Precious Achiuwa his game ball.
Bing bang.
Precious last night, 13 points, 8 rebounds, and assist, 2 blocks. He was 6 of 8 from the floor. He was a plus 13 across 24 minutes. That's now 7 game balls for Precious since getting traded to the Knicks. 2 as a starter, 5 as a reserve. Pretty damn good. And he looks so much better I'm very glad that Tibbs went with the lineup decision he did, because Precious's best fit seems like it's at the 5. I've probably hated on that before. Because yes, he's very, 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 very undersized. But I was kind of thinking about it. I had a conversation with a few people on Twitter. And like, it's going to come down to, what do you value more in a playoff series? Do you value spacing, or do you value size? And I was talking with someone on Twitter, Ariel Pacheco, who writes for The Strickland. Really good Twitter account. If you haven't followed him, do so. He's great with X's and O's, and he's a good writer. And I had a couple comments with him. We were talking about it, and just really put it into perspective. He just simply said, like, at the end of the day, it's all about making life easier for Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. So you put Precious at the 5, and that's going to make their life easier, because Precious at the 5, there's no big. He's the big. So it's just Precious and Hart at 4. So it's only 2 non-spacers. Whereas you put Precious at the 4, you have Hart at wing, Precious at 4, and then you have a big at 5. So now you have 3 non-spacers, which just you don't want in a playoff series. Which is why it's going to be interesting when everybody's healthy, when Mitch returns. How does Precious fit? How do you get him minutes at the 5? Because one of Mitch or Hart will be playing with the bench, which means Precious is going to be back at the 4. So you're going to have to do a little bit of staggering. You can make it work. You can stagger. But it's going to get tricky. Right? In a playoff rotation now, it shrinks even more. Right? You got your normal starting 5. Let's say Hart's the 5. And then you got your bench. Deuce, probably going to get the nod. Hart, Mitch. And then maybe an 8.5 man. Right? A 9th man / an 8.5 man. Who's not going to get many minutes. And that man's going to be situational. It's going to depend on game scenarios and matchups. I would think Burks is probably an odd man out at this point. Tibbs is trying his best to get him minutes, but he can't because he's been so bad. I would think Jericho Sims is probably out. He knows his role, and he's done an adequate job. Bojan Bogdanovic, if you need spacing, this is where it gets to be situational. It's probably going to be Bojan and Precious. If you need spacing, you need shooting in a game. If you're in the second half of a game, you're down 10 points, you'll probably give him Bogey some minutes. But you might go Precious if you're in a game where you need defense, or if you're playing a team where you need the right matchup, right? If you're playing Orlando, you're thinking about how Precious switched on to Paolo Banchero the other night very effectively. If you're playing a team like the Milwaukee Bucks, you might want a Precious out there so he can switch on to Dame, as opposed to just playing your usual drop coverage. And it also depends on which starter the Knicks are going to stagger with the second unit, because it's a 4-man bench. So, not to kind of go off topic there, but Precious Achiuwa, another good game last night. And for as long as he's here getting minutes, I'm very thankful of him. Now it's going to get interesting this offseason. I don't want to dive into this too much because you have to make a decision when it comes to your big man rotation. You're not going to pay all of these guys. Mitch is making $16 a year, descending. Hart, if you exercise his full bird rights, makes, I think, $16 a year also. Precious, let's just say for the hell of it, gets a deal where he's making $9 million a year. I don't know if I'm in the right ballpark. Let's just say that. So, who are you paying? I've said before a couple of times, I think ultimately the Knicks will move on from Mitchell Robinson. It's a movable contract, and it's a contract that could get you some assets for that star trade. Maybe he's involved straight in that star trade. And I think they're going to pay Isaiah Hartenstein. And then maybe pay Precious to be your backup. Right? That's not too much money. That's 22. If you get 16 and 8, a little more than that. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I don't want to dive too deep into it, but Precious Achiuwa, another great night last night for him. In this defense, like, that's what I'm most excited for. That's what everybody is most excited for, is this Knick defense now that OG is back. And listen, they had their rough moments, but they held their own. They somehow managed to stay top 10 in defense. And top 5, for that matter. But last night, they held Philly to 79 points. Again, that's actually 3 games in a row where the Knicks held their opponent to less than 80. And last night, you got to credit everybody, of course, but I think you're going to continue to see the same theme you saw in January, where OG Anunoby just makes everybody else's role so much easier. Because his fingerprints are all over a game. He's such a versatile wing defender. He can guard 1 to 5. The point of attack. Switch, pick and roll. Help. Recover. He can rotate weak side. He can stunt at strong side penetration. Tag a big. He can dig. Hedge a screen. Etc. He can do it all. And he was doing it all. And he'll do all that in like one possession. And then he'll do it again the next possession. And then again. And then again. And he's such the work ethic. And it's very like, it's like a hybrid of what Quickly did for you, where he was running all over the place. And it's like with like Hart's on-ball defense. It's, and that gets you this amazing top 3 defensive wing in the game. I've called him a young Kawhi before. He's got the personality for it, that's for sure. But he's got the defense. Like this kid is unbelievable. He makes everybody's life easier on both ends. Josh Hart is now no longer your best defender. Dante DiVincenzo now becomes your worst defender, not named Brunson, like in the starting lineup. Precious Achiuwa doesn't have to play 43 minutes and bust his ass anymore because he now becomes the 6th man. OG Anunoby shut down Tobias Harris last night. Shut down Tobias. Tobias Harris, 2 points, 3 assists, 1 rebound, 26 minutes in the game. In the game. Not in a quarter, not against OG, in the game. He had 2 total points. When OG was on him for 5 minutes and change overall, NBA.com, 0 points. And he was scoring on him, and he was locking him the fuck down. I went on Twitter on the Sixers Twitter page to troll after the win last night and the shit that Tobias Harris was getting. You can thank OG for that. The lineup flexibility that he's also going to provide you, right? Maybe it makes it easier to play a Bojan Bogdanovic because you're able to hide him. You can hide poor defenders. Now, when Randall gets back, it's going to be tricky. But you can go to these 3 wing lineups, which like I wish we still had Grimes. But it's still, you can go to lineups where you run out an OG Anunoby next to a Josh Hart. You play Dante at 2, Deuce at 1, and then when Mitch gets back, he could play 5 or Precious at the 5. Like, that is impossible to find a favorable switch. Good luck finding the mismatch, hunting a switch there. You can get so dynamic with these substitutions. Doesn't have to be rigid anymore. You saw last night. Again, Hart started at wing. OG was at 4. And then the first sub of the game was Precious for Isaiah Hartenstein. You could have easily went with OG at wing, Precious at 4, and then you're big. Like, he's going to change so much. He's just a winning player. And on Twitter, earlier today, I read a tweet by John Macri, who's the host over at KFS, tweeted that, took a screenshot of NBA.com, and I'll read it word for word here. Macri said, you can sort the top 2,000 most used 4-man lineups by net rating on NBA.com. The best 4 lineups in the league all belong to the Knicks, and they all feature who but OG Anunoby. Now, it's a small sample size, 8, 9, 10, 11 games, but unbelievable the impact he's had. And you know what? It feels wrong to not praise a Josh Hart after a win, because Josh Hart was the best player on the floor last night.
Bing bang.
Josh Hart last night, here's fun. You want a fun stat line? 20 points, 19 rebounds, 10 assists, 8 of 16 shooting, a steal, a block, a turnover, plus 32 in the box, 39 minutes. He was 1 rebound shy of joining David Lee for the only other Knick with a 2020-10 game. But Tom Thibodeau got soft, and he did not let Josh Hart get the 40th minute last night. Only played him 39. Funny little moment there at the end when Josh went to the bench, looked at the scoreboard, pumping his fist. Yes, I finally played below 40. Almost got the 2020-10. But he got a pathetic 19 rebounds. 11 game balls now in the year for Josh Hart. 5 as a starter, 6 as a reserve. That's the epitome of him. He does whatever he's asked. He was playmaking, obviously, last night with the 10 dimes. He was in transition, head up, pushing the ball up the floor, looking for guys on the wings and the corners. In transition, playing point guard in the half court a little bit. Kickouts off the weak side drive. A lot of that. And the dude is just out there defending, hunting rebounds, locking in on the ball, skying over bigger defenders, bigger offensive players to get his rebounds. I can't wait for Josh Hart in a playoff series. If Tibbs pushes the right buttons and Hart plays less and he's playing more towards 28 to 30 minutes, that's his sweet spot, and that's going to really help this team with OG back. I guess that's where I want to go next. How far can this team go? How far can this Knicks team go? We'll talk about it when we get back from break. Stay with us here on BD4 episode 643. Studio 69 Productions is a podcast production agency created by Leo Rodriguez to allow content creators to market their podcast. It's an online platform that will market your podcast or any other project that you're working on. Get in touch with Leo Rodriguez from Studio 69 Productions. You can find Studio 69 Productions on Instagram at Studio69NJ. Studio 69 Productions, where dreams are heard and born. All right. Welcome back to the show, episode 643 of the podcast. If the Knicks get whole, just how far can they go? Just what is their ceiling? I hate that I'm going down this optimistic road again. But getting OG back made me feel like it. Like the Knicks completed the first stage, right? They treaded water without Anunoby. They went 8-10, 9-10. They remained a home court seat. So now they still have to complete the second stage. Got to get through it the rest of the way until Randall gets back. Maybe that's late March. Maybe that's April. Maybe it's not until the playoffs. But they do need Julius. They need him. His scoring, his rebounding, yes. But most importantly, it's his offensive creation, his post gravity. When he's on the post, creating other looks for the perimeter shooters. Passing out of the post, swing, hockey assists that force the defense into rotation. So they need him. But if they were able to go a couple games below 500 without OG Anunoby and Julius, you hope that they can do a little bit better now with Anunoby until Julius gets back. Again, hopefully within the next few weeks. But what is their ceiling? If they all get back, Mitch is the bonus. I don't know that he's going to be back or effective. But, like, if Randall gets back at the very least, what is this team's ceiling? You know, people are saying finals. I'm not jumping to that conclusion yet. I don't have that expectation. I think next year, depending on what we do in the summer, but hopefully next year is that window. But is it possible that the Knicks can make an Eastern Conference Finals run? Again, I said it before, if they run into the right matchups and they're healthy, there's a window. You know, little things bounce their way. They have to avoid Boston. You know, they have to find a way to avoid the Celtics. That's the one matchup that I just hate for the Knicks. Everybody else, I feel like, is doable to very fucking doable in the Eastern Conference. I feel like the Bucks, they scare you a little bit. They got the two-headed monster up front, but they don't play enough defense. They're a little bit soft. I don't fear them like I do Boston. The Sixers, if they get Embiid back, it'll be a series. I think it's doable. I definitely don't fear Cleveland. Orlando, I don't trust them in a playoff series. I think they're very young, and I don't think they have the offense yet. Indiana, I think they play a style of offense that hurts their defense, but also might hurt them in the playoffs when the game slows down and you get into the half court. So there's not many teams. The Miami Heat is always one that you're keeping an eye on because just of the PTSD going back to the 90s. But, like, I'm fine in a series against the Heat. Like, it sounds like the John Morant thing. No, like, I'm fine. Like, the Knicks went to 6 games last year. They can easily do it and beat them. I think the Boston Celtics are really the only team where I look at and I'm like, no, the Knicks aren't winning that series. The Knicks will be happy to get 6 games. And it's a lot of things, of course. It's star power, but it's the head coaching that concerns me. Tom Thibodeau against the Boston Celtics, I'm not sure gets it done. Because Tom Thibodeau's whole thing is rim protection. It's not three-point defense. Tibbs is super hell-bent, too hell-bent on never conceding the paint. Boston is super potent, too potent to not sell out on the three-point line. So Tibbs is going to go with drop coverage 90% of the time. Even if you're going up against an offense like Boston where they run 5 out. They run pick and pop. And that's the sole reason the Knicks continue to lose to this Boston team every single time. It's Kristaps and pick and pop. It's Boston running 5 out running those stack pick and roll actions, and hitting the top. That's been a nightmare matchup for Mitchell Robinson. That's been difficult for Isaiah Hartenstein. He's slower footed. Jericho is a switch big. He's got quick feet on the perimeter, but he's small. I feel like if they were to run into Boston, you probably stick Precious onto KP. There's no great option, but yeah, like it's a tough team to play. So I think an Eastern Conference Finals run is possible if they run into the right teams. But that's why, like, star power it's all about star power, and that's why I think the Knicks should use Bogdanovic's contract, Mitchell Robinson's contract, to maneuver and get that star this summer. Not opposed to Mikal Bridges. I know a lot of people want him. I don't know that that's possible. The Donovan Mitchell thing is obviously a big conversation. You know my thoughts there. But the Knicks, they're in a good spot, man. It just felt so good to get OG back last night. And you know, all the doubters, like the TNT people, national media, ESPN, etc., they can all fuck off. Because at the end of the day, it's March 13th. These people have been going up there and nitpicking all season long, moving the goalposts. At the end of the day, it's March 13th and the Knicks are still winning. Throughout all the bullshit, they are still the 4 seed. Questions or not, concerns or not, if that hasn't gotten the Knicks any respect by now from these people, nothing ever will. Trust me. So, Candace Parker, Kobe's little sidekick, Becky Hammond, Kenny Smith, Stephen A., Will Bond, ESPN, any of those people, they're all playing a game. If the Knicks haven't gotten the respect by now, they're all playing a game. Period. Simple. They're not there to actually evaluate and analyze. Otherwise, they would say some positive things more often, as opposed to treating this team like they're in a title or bust window already. So, the bottom line is Knicks fans know what the fuck they're talking about, because they're the ones watching 48 minutes of this team every night. And I'm excited. So with that said, we'll head to our final break and wrap this shit up with our trivia. Let's do it.
Thanks for listening to BD4, where there is no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. We also do MMA, Yanks every series, Knicks every game, and MMA on occasion.
Welcome back to the podcast, episode 643 of BD4. I'm your host, RJ Carbone. Let's wrap this up with our trivia question, and that'll be that. Okay. Welcome back to the show, episode 643, our trivia question of the night. Starting in 1987-1988, how many seasons in a row did the Knicks make the playoffs? Starting in 1987-1988, how many seasons in a row did the Knicks make the playoffs? So let me know the answer wherever you can reach me. If you get the answer correct, I'll give you a shout out in the next episode. I'm reading some very odd shit. Apparently, Aaron Rodgers is running for vice president with this RFK guy. The fuck is happening? All right, folks. Thank you so much. Always appreciate it. If I have the time, I'll try to get something Yankees out for 644. If I have the energy, if I have the motivation to talk about this dire team right now, I'll try to get an episode out talking about the Cole news that came out today. Dylan Cease news. So, we'll see. If not, we'll be talking Knicks for 644. As for 643, I appreciate you stopping by, and I'll see you in the next show. Later. This episode was brought to you by Anchor.
Hey there! If you stayed the entire way through, we thank you immensely for it. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and that you come back for the next episode real soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, download these episodes, and share them with your friends as well. BD4 is a 5-star podcast simply because of you. And we'd like to keep it that way. Have a wonderful day. Go Yankees and go Knicks!